Hi BookTube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing very well. Today, maybe rather surprisingly, I've got a book haul for you. So if you've been watching the channel over the last few weeks, last couple of months, you'll have seen that I'm supposed to be on something of a book buying diet or a book buying ban. But when the person you have made the rules with says that there are conditions under which books coming into the house is okay, I'm more than happy to go along with those conditions. So I'm not ending the diet. Um, Instead, if anything, is having these books that I'm going to show you now, it's still making me very aware of the number of books that come in, the number of books sat around that are unread, but also the number of books that are probably not going to be reread that I'm glad I've read and that I'm happy to get rid of. And so I've got a book haul that I'll start with, and then I've got to finish off a book unhaul. I've got a pile of books that I'd like to get rid of, not because I didn't enjoy them, but just because I don't think I'll ever reread them. So then let's start off with the books that I got. The first book, and there are books that have ended up here in different ways. The first one, and this is I think a first time for me, this is the book that I bought for someone else, and then it turned out that they already had it. It was for my sister's birthday, and she loves the Brontes, and it's sort of difficult finding Bronte related stuff that she hasn't read. But I was fairly certain I hadn't seen this around in her house, and I just hadn't looked hard enough. It turned out she already had a copy, so with it being very nice, I decided to keep it. It's the Brontes. It's a illustrated collection of their letters, their diaries, and so on. So it's got stuff from Charlotte, Emily, and Anne, with these illustrations in there as well. So it's sort of a general story of all of their lives, and yeah, it'll be a lot of stuff I already know, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. So that's the illustrated letters and diaries of the Bronte sisters. And then it was my birthday as well, and so the rest were really sort of a birthday present, either books that people got for me or then books that with birthday money I was given permission to use it towards books. So first up, a birthday present. I'd recently read the selected essays by Montaigne, and so I was given the collected, the complete essays translated by M.A. Screech. So this will be a project for later on down the line. But I know I enjoy him. I know I enjoy spending time with him. And last time I was listening to an audiobook of the essays, and I was feeling that although it was a really fun way to encounter them for the first time, I wanted to engage with them on the page as well. And so I've very luckily been gifted the complete essays. And then my sister got me. She did a much better job than me of finding books. She got Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky. It's just that story by itself, and it's translated by someone I haven't come across before. It's translated by Natasha Randall. And she also got me this rather fetching bookmark. It's also a pen. So we've got some Dostoevsky in a translation I'm not aware of, and a zebra, a suit-wearing zebra. And then there are 4 books that I got with the birthday money. First off, we visited a second-hand bookshop that we hadn't visited before, and when we were in that, I thought it was the only time that would be using any birthday money towards books, and so I was trying to be quite selective, and I found this one. It was really beaten up, it looked really beaten up in the shop. So I wasn't sure whether to get it, but then I opened it and I knew that I wanted to get it. So it's the Aeneid by Virgil, translated by Robert Fitzgerald. And it just had a really old library dust cover over it. So I've taken that off because essentially that had taken all of the beating. And although this is still a little bit beaten up, it doesn't look as tatty as it had originally. It's got lovely deckled edges, and just the way it looks on the page as well is just really lovely. So I think it'll be a really lovely reading experience. And I've read Robert Fitzgerald's translation of the Iliad, which I enjoyed, and so I think I'll get on with him as a translator. So yeah, I'm glad to have added that to the collection. And then the other one I found there was a box set of a work I was curious about. So we'll see how it goes. It's a box set of A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. I've got The Golden Gate, a long poem, a novel in verse that he wrote. This is a massive novel that he wrote. So it seems like he's a very ambitious writer. I'll maybe start with The Golden Gate since it's at least a little shorter than A Suitable Boy. But I was curious about this, and I was reading it, and I was reading the first page, and it sort of seems like Pride and Prejudice with the way the opening is, just the style of the opening, but in a context and a culture that's not nearly as familiar to me. So I'm looking forward to learning more there. And then about a week later, my parents texted, asked if we wanted to do like a family meetup in Hay-on-Wye, of all places, which was sort of torturous. And I think I sort of built it up in my head, and I was prepared for the fact that I was going to go to Hay-on-Wye, and I wasn't able to look at books, and so I wasn't allowed to buy any books, and so I was just envisaging how nice it's going to be to walk through all these bookshops, and without having to lug all of these books home with me. And then on the way there, my wife was like, "You know what? You still got some birthday money left. You may as well, you may as well buy some books." And so I bought 2 books, which felt like enormous restraints when you're in Hay-on-Wye. And that is on a very Russian theme. I got Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman, which I've heard is supposed to be, it's like the Soviet War and Peace, essentially. And I really like the look of these Harvel editions. It's just like the layout and the feel, and the look of them. So when I saw that they had this in that edition, I was quite pleased. And then, another book that I've been looking out for over the last few months. It's Natasha's Dance by Orlando Figes. It's a cultural history of Russia, and I was sort of under the impression that it was mainly going to be the sort of deeper cultural history of sort of the more sort of European leaning, sort of Muscovite sort of culture, and maybe looking at how it contrasts with general European culture, but then just sort of going into that. Instead, it does actually look like he's going into the whole of Russian culture and all of the the various cultures and people groups that live in this enormous landmass. So it sounds really, really interesting. The title itself comes from a moment in War and Peace. So as soon as I put 2 and 2 together there, with it being really one of the best moments in War and Peace, I was, just really enthusiastic about it. And then I've got a paperback here of books that my wife got in Hay as well, one of which she's already read. And she also wanted me to show you the paper bag that it comes in and how satisfying it is. That the paper bag is like kind of like the perfect proportion for the size of the books. First up, if I can get it, yeah, there we go. This is the one she's read, The Vanishing Game by Meg Schaefer, which my wife described as it's almost like a children's book for adults. So it's got all the coziness of a children's book, but just a little more adult, but not no adult contents. I think is the impression I got. So it sounds very nice, very cozy. Yeah, it's a grown-up's book, but with a nice map in the beginning. And so she really enjoyed it. So I think it's like a piggyback recommendation. I'm gonna throw her recommendation at you, and if the terrible way I've described this comes across to you and it sounds like something you'd like, then give it a go. And then 3 books, the first of which she's read, and so she wanted to get a kind of matching set. It's Howl's Moving Castle, which she's already read and I've already read, and one of my wife's all-time favourite books. And we've got The House of Many Ways and Castle in the Air. So this is the rest of the series, essentially, which I was never aware that it was a series, but I think she's been looking out for the whole thing for some time. And so when I don't think she intentionally got a matching set, but my parents very kindly picked it up for her. And that is the book haul. So we've got a few books for me, a few books for my wife, and one book for my sister that ended up being for me. So before I go, I'll quickly go through the books that I'm planning to pass on, that I'll be parting ways with, and they all, on the whole, some of them I have mixed feelings about. Some of them I really enjoyed, but can just see now, with some time, that I'm not going to read them again, really. So the first is The Circle by David Eggers. Really good. It's a really intriguing sort of satire, quite a dark satire of social media and the way it's affecting us. I found it really interesting, and but just I don't know. I feel like I can easily engage with the ideas he's bringing up without rereading it. And so if I ever change my mind, I can easily find it, which goes for most of these books. Next up, Jasper Fforde, The Air Affair. This was one I'd just seen around for years and years, and just wanted to know what it was about. And it was a lot of fun, very goofy and odd. I think to such a degree that I think it got a bit grating after a while, but it was still fun and I still enjoyed it. So all of these are still recommendations, really. Of a totally different tone, then we've got In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, sort of a true crime book about an innocent family being murdered, and then Truman Capote investigating, I suppose, and trying to work out, what these people who did it were like. Can't remember really all of the details, but I'm not intrigued enough really to go and reread them to sort of rediscover it. But it's one I'm glad I read. A Kiss Before Dying by Ira Levin. This was really, really good. I'd really recommend this if you're into sort of odd psychological thrillers. This one kept me up all night reading, and it's just one of those ones where it felt like it hit really hard at that very specific point, and I can look back very fondly at the time I read it. I can still remember a lot of it and a lot of the feelings it evoked. Um, and I don't really feel like I need to reread it at the moment. There's plenty more I'd want to get to before rereading it, and so it doesn't need to be taking up space on my bookshelves. The next couple I was a little disappointed with, I think. The first I didn't really have any expectations with, it just didn't connect with me at all, really. It was Weather by Jenny Orville. I seem to remember certain elements of the character, the main character being quite endearing, I suppose, and it was quite quirky, but it just felt a bit directionless to me. And yeah, in the end, I didn't really have much to think of it. Um, and then we've got Nervous System by Lena Miroane, which is written in a very similar way in these quite short fragments on the whole of about a page and a half or sometimes less. And I enjoyed this a little bit more, but I also I'd heard about this and sort of built up expectations for what it was like, and then just didn't really connect with it at all. So again, one I'm glad I read, and I'm glad I sort of found out what it was like. But I don't think I'll be rereading it to give it a second chance, really. This is one that I really loved, and I'm getting rid of this because I know I like it. I know I want to reread it, but I want to buy a different edition of it, and I don't need two editions of this book. It's To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, which was wonderful. And I've got Mrs. Dalloway in a lovely vintage edition that's a bit smaller. It's got a lovely sort of painted cover, and there's a matching set of Virginia Woolf novels in the same format. And so I want to get To the Lighthouse and maybe some of Virginia Woolf's other books in the same format. And so I'm happy to get rid of this because I won't be rereading it that soon. And so I'm happy to wait until I find that other edition. And then a book that I've read and reread, and I'm glad I reread it the second time because I really enjoyed it a lot more the second time round. This is The Hearing Trumpet by Leonora Carrington. Really odd, surreal novel about an old woman and about sort of being a rebellious old woman, and it gets quite odd and supernatural at the end. And I enjoyed it quite a lot more the second time round. But then looking back, I'm happy to leave it there. I don't think it needs another reread for me. And if in 10 or 20 or 50 years' time I change my mind, I can probably find an edition quite easily. Then next up, one that I've only just read, but it was one where I enjoyed the opening, didn't love the middle, and then the end sort of redeemed the whole thing for me, but not to the extent that I think I need to reread it. And I'm happy to get rid of it. I don't think I'll ever reread this. It's The House of Ulua by Amelia Pardo Bazan. And I want to explore more sort of classic Spanish literature. I've read some poetry by Lorca. I've read Don Quixote. And so this was like maybe one of the first pieces of 19th century Spanish literature that I'd read. And it was good. I'll talk a bit more about it when I do an end of month wrap up, and I won't get rid of this until the end of the month. But yeah, I can't see myself rereading it, but I'm very glad that I did read it, and I'm glad that the ending sort of made up for the doubts I was having about the whole thing in the middle. And then next up, I think the only poetry book here, this is 3 poems by Hannah Sullivan. I didn't know too much of what to think about this. It was a case of I had sort of middling expectations, and then I let them fade to the background, picked this up and was hoping to be surprised, and in the end, all I had were the middling expectations that I was, or this sort of middling impression that I'd been expecting to have. And so actually, I think my gut was kind of right all along. There were moments of brilliance in the poetry, but on the whole, I found it just a bit lackluster and a bit, yeah, I don't know, a bit aimless is the wrong word. But there are contemporary poets that I enjoy a lot more. And then finally, the last one, again, one I read this year, and although it's a really beautiful book and an enjoyable book to read, I loved reading it. But again, just one that I don't feel like I need to reread. It's a history book, and I think if I want to look into this period in history again, there are more specific books that I can get. This was a very general look at the Renaissance and the Reformation. It's Heretics and Heroes by Thomas Cahill. And yeah, I enjoyed it. There were just elements of it that just felt, yeah, a bit too general, a bit too much like he's using the past as a vehicle to address present issues, or present issues for him as he was writing, which isn't, inherently a bad thing. It's just not necessarily what you're expecting, with the way the book was branded. But I still enjoyed it, and it is a really lovely book. I love the Bruegel on the front and in the end papers, and it is a lovely book. And so this is one where, just as an object, I'm a little loath to get rid of it. And strictly speaking, I don't need to, but I know I won't reread it. I won't necessarily flip through it very often, so it will just be collecting dust on a shelf. And so I don't know, maybe that's the one I'm least sure about. We'll see how it goes. I'm not committed to getting rid of all of these in one go. This is just a pile I've made. It's often what I do when I get rid of books. I build a pile and then leave it around for a while and see if I want to add anything to it or take anything off. But I'm trying to get better at this. Books coming in and books coming out, not necessarily at the same time. But it's just keeping things rotating, and it's sort of refining the book collection as well. It's, if there are books that are going to be hanging around, I want them to be books that I either really want to reread someday, or I'm really proud to have them sat there. And so if they're books that I have these sort of middling feelings about, or books I feel like I'll never reread, or yeah, just if that really strong feeling isn't coming across, then I'm quite happy to move on. And with all of these, really, I can, I'll be able to find them again in the future, probably secondhand, if I ever change my mind. So it's not the end of the day there. But that's it. That is an unexpected book haul, and a book unhaul to kind of make up for it. And this will be the last book haul for some time. And I feel quite good in the sense that it actually has been quite some time since the last one, and it'll probably be even longer. Well, it'll definitely be even longer until the next one. So I hope that, was a nice respite for you. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.